Today, we're jumping into one of the shortest letters in the entire Bible, but don't let its size fool you, because this thing is absolutely packed with drama. It's a story about betrayal, forgiveness, and a request so radical it could literally turn the social order upside down. So, at the heart of this whole thing, you've got three people caught up in a seriously high-stakes situation. We're talking a slave owner, his runaway slave, and an apostle, who's in prison, by the way, sending a letter that forces a decision that is, no exaggeration, life or death. So what on earth was in this letter? Okay, so to really get why this letter is so powerful, you have to look at something really unusual about it, who it was actually for. See, on the surface, it seems like a super private matter, but it was actually designed to be read out loud for everyone to hear. Yeah, this is not one of Paul's big, sweeping theological letters to a whole city. Nope, this is a direct, from-the-heart appeal from one friend to another about something, well, something really awkward and sensitive. You could almost feel the personal history and the raw emotion in every single word. And that right there is the big mystery, isn't it? If this is so personal, why wasn't it just a quiet, sealed note passed between friends? Why make it public? Well, it turns out Paul had a very specific and, honestly, a very clever strategy up his sleeve. And the answer to that puzzle? It all comes down to the number of people he sent it to. It wasn't just addressed to one person. Paul makes a point of addressing it to 4 distinct parties. And this is where it gets really interesting. You look at the greeting, and of course it's addressed to Philemon. He's the main guy. But then Paul adds Apphia, who's called a sister and was clearly a big deal. Then there's Archippus, a fellow soldier who was probably a leader in the church. And then, and this is the kicker, he addresses it to the entire church that meets in Philemon's own house. I mean, what a genius move, right? By making sure this letter was read out loud, Paul basically turned a private request into a public testimony. Suddenly, Philemon isn't just answering to Paul. Oh no, he's got to make his decision in front of his entire faith community. It puts this gentle but very real community pressure on him to do the right thing. So let's get to know the people at the center of this incredible drama. Who are these key players? First up, you've got the Apostle Paul. But, and this is super important, he's not writing this as some big shot with a ton of authority. He makes it a point to say he's a prisoner for Christ Jesus. He's coming from a place of weakness, of humility. He's not commanding, he's appealing. Then you have Philemon. He is a wealthy, influential Christian in a city called Colossae. I mean, we know he's got some serious resources because his house is big enough for the whole local church to meet in. In this story, he's the guy with all the power and status. And finally, there's Onesimus. He's Philemon's slave, and he's the reason this whole thing is happening. He's run away, which was a huge crime in the Roman Empire, and, well, it seems like he might have done more than just run away. Okay, and this is where the story takes a turn that is just, you couldn't make this up. The runaway slave and the imprisoned apostle. Their paths are about to cross in the most unbelievable way. I mean, just think about the odds here. Onesimus, a slave from Colossae, runs away. He somehow finds his way to where Paul is locked up, which was probably all the way in Rome, and against all odds, he connects with the one guy who happens to be his master's close friend. And right there, in prison, Onesimus becomes a Christian. It's just an amazing, almost unbelievable twist of fate. And this wasn't just some casual, say a prayer and you're in kind of conversion. Paul develops this incredibly deep, fatherly love for Onesimus. He stops seeing him as a runaway or a criminal. He starts seeing him as his own son. He literally calls him my very heart. This changes everything. Now, Paul's also a realist. He knows Onesimus probably didn't just leave quietly. The letter hints pretty strongly that maybe some stuff was stolen or some doubt was left behind. But instead of ignoring it, Paul just tackles it head on with this incredible offer. He basically pulls out a spiritual blank check and tells Philemon, hey, if he wronged you, if he owes you anything, just put it on my tab. I'll pay for it. So now you've got this new, powerful father-son bond that was forged in a prison cell. And this is when Paul makes his big move. He decides to send Onesimus back to Philemon, carrying a letter with one of the boldest, riskiest requests you can possibly imagine. And get this, he doesn't send Onesimus back groveling, begging for mercy. Not at all. He sends him back as a totally changed person, a brother in faith.
and he begs Philemon to see him in a completely new way.
To really grasp how insane this request was, you have to understand the massive difference between what Roman law said Philemon could do and what his Christian faith was now calling him to do. So Philemon basically had two options here. On the one hand, Roman law gave him every right to come down hard on Onesimus. We're talking severe punishment, flogging, maybe even branding him with an F for fugitive, or worse, he could reestablish total ownership. But Paul's appeal? It's the polar opposite. He says, don't punish him, forgive him. Don't treat him as your property, welcome him back as your equal, as your brother. And then, just to top it all off, Paul adds this one last brilliant bit of gentle pressure. He just casually mentions, oh, by the way, I'm hoping to get out of prison soon, so could you get a guest room ready for me? The message is crystal clear. I'm coming to visit, and I'm going to want to see how you handle this. So you see how it all builds. The public reading, the personal connection, the offer to pay his debt, the planned visit, it's all leading to one single revolutionary, world-changing idea. And this is the heart of the whole letter. The revolution in a single phrase. Paul is telling Philemon to completely change how he sees Onesimus. No longer as property, no longer as a slave, but as family. Because in this new family of God, those old social labels like master and slave, they don't apply anymore. All that matters is that you are now brothers. And that's really the big takeaway from this tiny letter, isn't it? It's a real-life example of how faith is supposed to work in the real world. It's not just some abstract idea. It's a force so powerful, it completely rewires human relationships. It tears down the social walls that we build up between each other and creates something entirely new, a unified family. Now, we never get a postscript telling us exactly how Philemon responded. But the very fact that we even have this letter, that it was saved and cherished, strongly suggests he did the right thing. And it leaves us with a pretty challenging question, doesn't it? In our world, which is still so full of division and hierarchy, what would it look like for us to take Paul's radical idea seriously? To stop seeing people based on their job or their status or their background, and instead just see them as beloved family?